don't know why they put a
Okay.
part 2 of the appendix in Ramjoo's diaries contains these little bios of the students. Some we read last week in Sobs and Throbs, so we'll be repeating a few of them, but there's more too. So part 2, Abdullah Pakrawan, the Chota Baba, childhood, and that starred, and it just gives the where it came from. K.A. Afsari Kashful Hakayak, 1929, translated from the Persian by Dr. Farhad Shafa. My name is Abdullah. I was born towards the end of Ramadan of 1327 AH. I mean that I suppose that means after Muhammad. Corresponding to 1909 AD, Anno Domini.
No, that wouldn't be Muhammad. Oh, Jesus was before. Never mind.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's peculiar that it's so early.
Right.
I don't know what it would be then. It's a puzzle. In the city of Bastak, in the feudal territory of Jahangir, it is said that my elder brother's, that's Muhammad's wedding, at my elder brother's Muhammad's wedding, my father, Haj Ruknuddin, spoke the following in a loud voice. I am looking forward to that day when, after much anticipation, I may behold my noble son, Abdullah. All in the gathering were bewildered that at his old age, Haj Ruknuddin wished to have another son. He answered, yes, although I am 80 years old, I am still awaiting that noble son of mine. One night in a dream, I saw a man with a white robe and long hair who had a radiant face. He told me that a boy will be born from my seed who will be raised and educated in his company. Call him Abdullah, slave of God, for he shall be a true slave and worshiper of God. A year later, when all this was forgotten, I was born. My parents were quite elderly, and I soon lost my pious and noble parents to God's beckoning. My loving parents raised me with all their affection and in all comfort. While alive, they never allowed the slightest harm, whether bodily or in the heart. Beautiful way of expressing that, huh? Ever to come to me. Although they did not die together, it was not long before one followed the other. Thus, I became an orphan at a young age, being too young and immature to earn my own livelihood. Some relatives took me in, raised me, and with each other's help, we made our living. When I was 10, along with a relative, we would occupy ourselves with a variety of jobs like plowing, harvesting, riding camels, gardening, etc. And we lived a happy and simple life together. Betty, would you please continue? Unmute first.
Education. Although I studied hard in the traditional Muslim schools, I was not satisfied, for I was seeking a higher level of education. I discontinued this type of schooling for a while, and in 1919 traveled to the port of Lenge, where my brother Muhammad lived. After settling in Lingay, I joined the primary school there, which had been opened in 1917 by the previous governor of that port with the help of some businessmen. After taking the usual tests, I was admitted and began the first grade of that school. Because of my great fondness for my studies and my continual eagerness to learn something new, I would study even on my way from school to home. I would also study foreign languages and topics which were taught in higher grades. Both the teachers and other students would praise how well I learned my lessons. And in the semi-annual and yearly examinations, I always ranked first. In a short time, I completed the different levels of the school, advancing rapidly from first to second to third grades, etc. The subjects taught in that school were Persian, Arabic, English, mathematics, and some others. Earning my livelihood. Whoops. During childhood and during my studies, I was always very weak and often ill. And despite lacking sufficient means to continue school with much enthusiasm and zeal, I still managed to bring my education to completion. So he's saying he did well, but he was ill. He wasn't strong. Okay. After finishing the 6th grade, I received my elementary school diploma in 1923. I began work at a business firm for a notable businessman called Ismail. As I had no experience in business, I was truly a novice in my job, but I had decided to focus on gaining all the experience that I could, so that in the future I could put to use all the knowledge that I had gained. Therefore, I made do with a small salary, establishing the start of my work and duties on a correct basis. I spent a year thus with a salary of 10 rupees a month, amounting to 120 rupees a year. It was agreed that my salary should be raised, but since each person is destined and is bound to pursue his own distinct future, according to the universal law, the law of love, I was not inclined to stay any longer in that port. I asked for a vacation and shortly afterward terminated my work there. After a short trip to Bastak for an urgent matter, I set out for Amman and from there went to the important port of Dubai, situated on the coast of the Arabian Peninsula. There, I continued my previous occupation and started to work in a business firm, earning 25 rupees a month, joining the school as teacher. Here again, after 6 months, I terminated this period of activity. He who turns the wheel of life and rules and attracts the glowing hearts of the wayfarers, he who reigns supreme over all creation and all the universe, has each one and each thing go its own distinct way. Then, after passing through the different stages and much hardship and suffering, he gathers them all around himself. Thus, after leaving my job and traveling for some time in the ports and villages of Saudi Arabia, once again I returned to my previous abode, the port of Lingay. There, after spending a month without a job, I applied as a teacher in the same school where I had gained my elementary education, had enjoyed love, and had gained worldly knowledge from my teachers. In their first session, they all reviewed my case and unanimously hired me to be a teacher for the first, second, and third grades. For a period of more or less 1 year, I served these youngsters of today, who are to be parents to the children of tomorrow, and did not shirk the slightest from my responsibility towards them, since my real purpose was helping mankind and serving innocent children. I had renounced making money and would make do with 7 tomans a month. Thus, I would help, not pressure the school, which was in a sad financial condition, satisfying myself with little, bearing the hardships with content and not without complaint. During those days, early days of my teachings at the school, many of the people, some of the parents, but mostly their relatives, although there were some against them as well, would call me an infidel and one without a religion. They criticized me for having stopped the Muslim prayers and fasting, and for having cut my hair English style, and accused me of having abandoned all faith. In short, I was enveloped in much superstition and ignorance, but they only saw the externals, while internally and is in his presence, I would be worshiping my Creator in the temple of my heart, where that compassionate beloved abides. My faith and my religion were God. I was after truth, and I was searching for my true self. Now and then during the night, I would wake up with outstretched arms, would plead to the all-powerful, absolute God, the creator, the master, and the teacher of mankind. I would plead, "Oh
Could you slow
thou,"
down a little bit, please, Betty?
okay,
Thanks.
I would plead, "O thou, the all-knowing, the all-seeing, the all-hearing, guide me to a master where the flower of my heart may blossom, and where my soul may be scented and refreshed in the flower garden of his truth. Guide this lost soul to a path where it might find rescue from this deep well of darkness and ignorance, where it might scale the heights of salvation. In reality, my soul and my heart were drunk from the wine of his love, and my purpose was to reach the throne of the King of Heaven. Mayhap that all the hearing, mayhap that the all hearing, the all seeing, the all wise, he who answers every prayer and knows all our needs, may accept my plea and grant me my desire. But the real work was in progress internally and in secret, and that which I had sought for such a long time was about to be granted.
Very nice. Thank you, Betty. Wendy, could you unmute and continue, please?
Trip to India. Towards the end of my stay at the above-mentioned school, where I taught the children who I considered as my dear brethren, regarding their lives as my own, one day, while reading a newspaper published in Calcutta, I saw an announcement about the opening of a charity school and dormitory called Meher Ashram in the vicinity of Ahmednagar. Upon reading that, I'll let you move it up. Thank you. That announcement and learning about the regulations and arrangements of that school. It was as if I was all of a sudden set on fire. I lost all patience, eagerly wishing to go to India and enter that school to further my education. Therefore, I wrote my letter of resignation at my teaching job and asked for leave from the honorable staff of the school. After my resignation was accepted, I left my job and began to gather all necessary prerequisites for my trip to India. This included a health certificate from a local doctor, one of the requirements for the children in the Mehrabad dormitory. Also, after much trouble, I acquired a passport. In less than 4 or 5 days after reading that announcement in the newspaper, I wrote a note to the principal of that school, and upon receiving a favorable reply, I said farewell to all friends, relatives, students, and teachers, and sailed on the Boraja for India. After 8, I'll let you go. Thank you. Whoop. Thank you. After 8 days on the sea, on August 3rd, 1927, while the Indian Ocean was in a storm, we anchored in Bombay. I spent 4 days there with 3 or 4 friends. Then I took a train for Ahmednagar. This was my first trip on the train and my first visit to India. And although I had heard much about India, I had not seen it with my own eyes. I enjoyed the green fields and the lush dales and valleys as we tore through the heart of the mountains. But as I was familiar with the local dialects of that land, I did not speak with anyone, neither did I ask for help from anyone. Entering Mehrabad. Anyway, after a 16-hour train ride in a cool morning when there was a delightful chill in the air, I descended from the train in the Ahmednagar station and immediately rented a carriage, which took me for 3 or 4 miles on a road with trees on both sides to Mehrabad. I walked up the hill on top of which Meher Ashram was located. After meeting the principal, Mr. Baramshi, nicknamed Lal Sahab, and chatting with him, I was sent accompanied by a man named Rustam, known as Aga Badul, to another building located at the foot of the hill. There I removed my shoes and entered a room where I found myself in the presence of a radiant person with a rosy face and beautiful hair. Truly, from that very moment, I felt a small portion of his greatness in my heart. After some questions about my home, the reason for my travel to India, my age, and a minor test in mathematics, again, I was sent with Aga Badul to Meher Ashram, which was on top of the hill. There, Bao Sahib, the principal of the school and dormitory, whom after a short talk, I found to be noble, sweet, and kind person, invited me to have breakfast. I had some food and tea. Then I visited all the rooms and buildings of the dormitory. I saw the equipment and noticed the ways of the children, one by one, and became acquainted with the daily program, brackets 24-hour, at Meher Ashram. Then they noticed the signs of weariness and lack of sleep, which were due to my trip. So they took me to a clean house where I could rest and recover. There I lay on my bed for 3 or 4 hours. When I got up, I found myself completely refreshed, with all signs of the trip having disappeared. After lunch, once again, I toured the institution, especially attentive to the manner in which the children study.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Marion, could you unmute, please, and continue?
My second day in Meherabad was a Sunday, the 9th of August, 1927. I was then 17 years old. The day after, the school was open and I joined the rest of the children in class. After inspecting my school diploma, they were satisfied with my educational background and I was admitted to the school named Hazrat Babajan High School. Since I had arrived late, I felt unfamiliar and wanted to have more time to study than was possible according to Meher Ashram regulations. I asked the principal if it were possible for me to have a private room so that I could spend more time at my studies. As the founder of the institution sought the content, I think it's content, as the founder of the institution sought the content and happiness of the members and could not see any one of those who lived around him and depended on him to be sad or disappointed, he ordered the people working at the institution to do as I wished. Life at Meherabad. Thus, the following day, just as I wished, I took all my belongings from the dormitory down to a room where 2 other Iranians lived. That was where I was placed, here in my own room. No strict rules or regulations were in effect. Therefore, I would spend most of my time studying and preparing my lessons for school. And after a month or 2, I began to prepare myself for the yearly examination, getting up at 2 or 3 a.m. to study. Life here was totally free and very comfortable, without a single expense. I found all the people at Meherabad to be kind and with a good and pure character. During my stay at Meherabad, all the people from the vicinity and also from far away would come, group by group, to kiss the feet and hands of that master. Even an Iranian brother who arrived sometime after my arrival. But since I was caught in religious fanaticism and I had not understood the truth of the matter, although I was growing in the lap of that great world teacher, and I was benefiting from his benign mercy, still it was rare that I should go to visit him. Even when I went, I completely refrained from kissing his feet. But as kissing a person's hand is somewhat prevalent among Muslims, and I called myself a Muslim, I kissed the blessed hand of that exalted one, the beloved of all mankind and the teacher of all the world, Hazrat Meher Baba, and once or twice put his hand on my eyes. This I did, knowing well that neither would it add anything to his great state, nor that avoiding it would do any harm to his truth and spirituality. During this first 2 or 3 months of my stay in Meherabad, his mercy and infinite kindness would often bring him personally to the room where 4 of us from Iran used to live. He inspected our cleanliness and observed whether we obeyed the principles of hygiene. If he would find the slightest faltering, he would become disgusted with our negligence and would do his utmost to remedy the situation. Transfer to Meher Ashram. As that beloved of the world knew of my life and future, and as my destiny was already visible to his all-seeing eyes, and as he knew of all that had to happen, many times he advised and encouraged me to enter the Meher Ashram. Finally, since I had managed to catch up in my studies with my classmates, although I did not know of the good fortune that awaited me in Meher Ashram, I agreed to this request and listened to the useful advice of my beloved, that unequaled being, Hazrat Meher Baba, and with content moved to Meher Ashram. There I became a roommate of a newcomer from Iran. I was familiar with the boys from before and knew their way of life, and gradually I became acquainted with the rules and regulations of life there. Thus, living there was not difficult for me. The date of transfer from Meherabad to Meher Ashram was the 25th of October, 1927. It might be proper to say a few words about the way of life at the Meher Ashram.
Thank you, Marianne. Ernie, could you unmute and continue for us?
Meher Ashram. Meher Ashram. Meher Ashram is a building and an institution. Can you hear me all right?
Perfectly.
Okay. Meher Ashram is a building and an institution on top of a hill outside the railroad, 3 or 4 miles from Ahmednagar. With delightful meadows, it is very beautiful with a good climate and complies with all the requirements of good hygiene. In summer, the temperature rises above the level of comfort, but the rest of the year, the air is fresh and pleasant. Most important of all, it is an institution founded by the beloved perfect master of the age, the lover of all mankind, the master of the universe, and the king of all the holy beings, Sri Meher Baba, which was established and opened to all in May of 1927. Children from every group and caste and following any faith or religion were accepted there. Life in this dormitory called Meher Ashram was completely free, with all comforts and ease for the children. The parents had to read the regulations of Meher Ashram, and after being completely satisfied, could leave their children and go away. Neither tuition nor any other fees for clothes, books, etc., were demanded from them, as they were all provided free of charge for the children. The length of stay was 5 years, during which they could study up to 7th English grade. It was mandatory that the children should stay for this period, and none could leave until the termination of this 5 years, except if the founder and the staff should decide to send a child to his home after 6 months, 10 months, 1 year, or 3 years. All the children lived like brothers together, and all were like children of one father and slaves of one God. They spent night and day acquiring knowledge, courtesy, good behavior, and good character. Prevalent games in that institution were hockey, cricket, ping pong, and some of the local Indian games for children. When they had finished school and prepared their lessons, the children would gather in groups to participate in these games. Each in his turn was required to bathe once every other day with hot water. After entering Meher Ashram on the aforementioned date, I spent a long time studying with diligence and enthusiasm among my friends and brethren, Persian, Indian, and Muslim, who exceeded 120. We passed our lives in the grace of that unequaled beloved and under the eyes of the staff. Spiritual teachings. In addition to the regular studies at school, such as reading and writing, and preparing for the lessons in the dormitory, it was customary that children from different language groups gathered in different rooms and listened to spiritual discussions and lectures delivered by the teachers in the native languages of the children. These included episodes from the lives of saints and holy personalities, life stories of prophets, and tales concerning their deeds. These the children kept in their memories. After a short period, it was time for the birds who had gathered the seeds of infinite truth and had collected fruits from the Garden of Union to benefit from the precious results of the eternal trees of truth. The time had come for those thirsting after the elixir of life to join the saints and the blessed ones on the high heavens and be satiated from the wine-filled fountain of divine love. That is to say, the time had come for those children under the mercy and guidance of that perfect guide and master to hear from his silent lips about divine secrets and the divine path. It was time for them to enjoy the fragrance of his infinite wisdom. During these sessions, when the teachers discussed spiritual matters, our beloved Baba would personally come and brighten the holy gathering of the class with his radiance, clarifying points and details about states and stages, the attraction, the spiritual truth, and the exalted state of the Master of all the holies, the King of all wayfarers, and the perfect Master of the age, gradually began to have such an effect on the hearts of the children that is truly rare, even in the case of seekers and yogis who have spent years in quest of divine love and who have been treading the path for many years. That is to say, the effulgent soul and exalted state of Baba, that unequaled master, had its effect, and a spark of fire began to appear in the hearts of these young children. It was as if their hearts were boiling over with divine love, and from that hot fire, their whole beings were in turmoil. Among those children who were well drunk with the wine of love offered by that beloved of the world, who were thrilled to such an extent that nothing but the sight of the beloved could satisfy or calm their hearts, was the writer, who was trying hard to discover the truth of those secrets.
Nice. Thank you, Ernie. Marvin, please. Could you unmute and continue?
One day, when the discourse on the lives of some of the kings of the mystics, like Shams Tabriz and Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, as well as talk about the state of Krishna, Muhammad, and Ali, came to an end, my beloved Baba looked deep into the faces of the children one by one and said the following: "To those whom I find worthy, I shall attract to the mistress of love, and I shall offer them the elixir of life. Children, only truth is real. All else is worthless." Although I did not have the strength to look into his radiant countenance and had lowered my eyes, he glanced at me, addressing me thus: "Try to be diligent. I shall make pure gold from your mixed alloy." The meeting was over, and all the children gathered to have their lunch. The profound effect that this short speech had upon me put me in a most bewildered state during most of the night, the morning, and the next day, which was a holiday. I wish someone who had been present could relate what happened. The truths that Baba explained and demonstrated were of the kind that open one's inner eyes and gradually lead one to God. I was so drowned in that ocean of thought and bewilderment that while playing hockey that Sunday, all the children were astounded and puzzled by my manner of standing, running, and by the color of my face. At any event, when the period for studies was over, lunchtime arrived and the special bell was rung. All the children, along with some of the staff who were helping to bring the dishes, had arrived. First, we repeated God's names in different languages to a beautiful tune, and then all the children began to eat. The first state. After a few morsels, I suddenly felt a change overtaking me. I put aside my plate and lost my natural state. My heart felt heavy. I began to feel an extraordinary heat, and everything began to get dark around me. Nay, I observed how things began to vanish around me. Abruptly and without my volition, a weeping welled up from the depth of my being, and I began to wail and cry, which had no apparent reason. Then I lost all consciousness of the children and the staff around me and became insensible to their talk. I do not remember anything else prior to passing out. After a short while, I found myself conscious again and repeating these words, I am far, I am far. Where is he and where am I? The director of the school, Bua Seb, was sitting next to me, gently comforting me and trying to help me stop crying. He was reminding me of what that exalted one had told and promised to me. But the spontaneous wailing and weeping were getting louder and louder, and now it was combined with shivering and shaking of all my muscles, making my breathing deep and fast. Time and again, I would quiet down, only to start crying again. I would forget myself and lose consciousness, only to regain it after a short while. After about an hour, I began to calm down a bit. My crying had somewhat stopped and my shivering was less. At that time, while in a state of limbo between sleep and wakefulness, a feeling of bliss overtook me. I raised my head and found my beloved sitting in front of me. His presence and the sight of his pure face once again moved me to tears, and unthinkingly, I fell at his holy feet. He was concerned about my wailing and crying, but I was lost in the ocean of oblivion. I swear to God that now, as I write these lines retelling what happened, my heart is pounding hard and my eyes are about to tear. After 5 minutes, I somewhat regained consciousness and sat in front of him, motionless like a statue, gazing with the bewilderment at the beauty of that unrivaled beloved. My eyes were wet with tears and my heart was burning in flames. And in my heart, I was singing these lines about true love. Oh, beloved, I have lost myself, yet I desire to lose myself even more. I speak to your eyes, telling them, I want to be as drunk as you are. I don't want a crown. I don't seek a throne. I only want to be thrown as dust in your service. Who has ever had such a lovely idol as I have? Who has ever had a moon sweet as honey? The sight of your countenance makes the earth shake, as in the day of judgment. Yet, in the paradise of your beauty, who would ever fear the fire of hell? I pleaded to him thus, O life of my soul, without you neither does joy make me happy, nor does rapture intoxicate me. You are my life. Without it, I know not how to live. You are my eyes. Without you, I have no sight. In any event, as time passed and weeks ended, the love of my beloved, whom I consider with all my heart to be my exalted master, became more apparent, and that fire became hotter and more burning. It finally reached such an extent that even when eating, bathing, studying, etc., I would be drowned in thoughts of him, and there was not a moment that I could forget him. Days passed and weeks ended while I was being consumed in the intoxication of his love. Desire for food had left me, and I had abandoned the care of my body and clothes, being totally oblivious of my surroundings. I was lost in meditation and in the longing to behold the beauty of my Baba. At this time, December 1927, Baba, the beloved of the world, the master of the universe, the king of all holy men, had secluded himself, spending day and night in a small area of seclusion. He did not set foot out of this area for 6 months. During this period, he had completely avoided food and fruits, drinking only some tea and milk. What can I say? For it is beyond the power of this pen to speak of that intoxication and oblivion.
Thank you, Marvin. Beautiful. Joy, please, could you unmute and continue for us?
Discontinuation of studies. Day after day, I would sit in the class, turning the pages of my book, trying to study. My eyes were fixed on the pages, but my heart was with my beloved. His name was my meditation, and thought of him my remembrance. I would answer the teacher's questions while my inner eyes were dazed and fixed on the matchless beauty of that blessed one. Often involuntary weeping would pour out of my heart, and bedazzled by this, I would begin to cry at my own sudden weeping. Only the sight of his glorious countenance could stop the flow of my tears and could calm my sobbing. Even the shortest period of separation from him was intolerable for me, moving me to tears which would wet all my clothes and bedding. After spending a period of in this state, since I could not live without the company of my beloved, and since I could no longer bear to pursue my studies, although the dormitory staff discouraged me, I set aside my studies, burning the books and breaking my pen. Thus I found relief from education and the distraction of my studies. And thus I was able to live and persist in the company of the beloved of the world. I had a tavern keeper who dispensed wine for the heart and nurtured my soul. Day and night I desired to gaze at his radiant face and continue to be near him, though it was not possible. But the power of love and the fire of longing destroy the cruelty of the beloved and soften his rock-like heart into wax. I could spend at least 14 hours daily in the company of my only beloved, but still it was not sufficient. In his presence, I would often break out into tears and throw myself at his feet. With the song of my wailings, which is the best music for the beloved, I would complain of the ache in my heart. The second state. One night, as usual, all the children and the staff, as well as some others, had gathered around him and were listening to his discourse about spiritual matters and about treading the path of truth. In the middle of the discourse, the writer, who was among the children, found his state changed and began to see an all around a radiant glow which betrayed the effulgence of the sun, quivering and flowing. I called out the beloved's name and instantly lost consciousness. I was unconscious for about 5 hours. When I regained it, I was taken to the exalted beloved who had stayed up till then. He ordered me to go to sleep, so I returned to my bed and slept until the next dawn. When the sun came out to brighten the dales and the hills, I rushed to his presence. First, I kissed his feet. No matter how much I would kiss and press my head and eyes on his feet, it would not soothe my burning heart. Neither would it help the turmoil and itch which had overtaken my heart and which could not be explained. Then I sat in front of him, but today my state was totally different from the previous days. Previously, when in his presence, I would habitually begin to meditate and get absorbed and intoxicated with bliss and would drown in the ocean of joy and contentment. But today it was different. From head to toe, All as one unit, I was immersed in one thought, the thought of the beloved. Without meditating or contemplating, my soul was enjoying peace and bliss, and my eyes were fixed on his pure and noble face. Gradually, every minute and every hour, my state would change, and every instant I would immerse deeper in the heaven of happiness and joy. Intoxicated and drunk, I would drown ever more deeply in the wine ocean of true love. If the gist of that joyous and blissful state of love were to be written, the pen would break and the paper would tear in awe. The consequences of the state I enjoyed were measurelessly mysterious.
Thank you, Joy. Mahu, could you unmute and continue, please?
Yes. The third state and the description of the vision. A short while following the occurrence of the second state, the focus of my concentration was fully established, and I was in constant remembrance. I was so immersed in this natural meditation that days would pass while I would have absolutely no appetite to eat or drink. During this period, I did not care for food, didn't care whether I sat in the sun or rain, due to the love that was given and the states caused, which were so blissful. Then not caring for heat or wet or hunger was from within and was natural, not for any purpose or any aim I could stand it, not trying to stand it, but just passing the hours in this way. Thus, I was constantly weeping and I was absorbed in meditation until January 1928, the last year, when at the time of sunset, as I was sitting close to my beloved master, immersed in thoughts of him, my state changed drastically. I immediately began to wail and scream and cry. My external eyes closed and my inner eye opened. I saw that my heart, my chest, all my limbs, veins, skin, and bones were overwhelmed and ruled by a being with such effulgence and glittering radiance that it brightened the most hidden corners of my heart. Awestruck from the sight of that radiant being, I forgot the world and all that was in it. Unaware of the apparent world and the people around, I spent 5 days thus intoxicated and unconscious. During all this time, the continuity of this vision remained unbroken, and I saw nothing but the glorious sight of his radiant and blessed being. I did not see even the smallest particle of the external world. I was in the height of bliss and joy because of this sight of him. I enjoyed the unique vision of my beloved and exalted master, Meher Baba, within my heart and soul throughout these 5 days. The visions of his glorious face made me hear a voice within me declaring, quote, "Remove your shoes, you are on holy ground." This I heard with my heart's ear. After that 5 days in the domain of unconsciousness, with the force of his inner voice, I became conscious again. When I opened my external eyes, my inner sight remained simultaneously intact. I enjoyed ineffable joy without a single thought, time, and again losing consciousness only to regain it immediately. As a result of this bliss, I still ate and slept as little as before, being intoxicated from a sight which I cannot express or explain. Because of this blissful vision of reality, I understood that the world with all its belongings and luxurious is like a dream and an illusion, and that it is truly a binding. I realized that getting hold of a true and perfect master is the cause for eternal freedom and satisfaction. At that time, I was told Baba mentioned to the Mandali that I had progressed to the 6th stage in the spiritual line, and I was called Chata Baba, meaning little Baba. Although some people constantly try to collect worldly belongings with the only purpose of having all the things that the world can offer, considering them the cause of happiness, I understood that in truth, collecting them, beholding them, and keeping them is the cause of misery and depression, and that beholding the countenance of the beloved with the inner eye, nay, even with the external eyes, creates an immense joy and increases happiness. Ever since that period up until now, I see that blessed being in myself, in others, and all around, continuously and without a break. It is very rare that due to great fortune, a perfect master with his infinite grace, mercy, and power raises one to such heights.
Wonderful, Mahu. Thank you. Alan Ray Powell, could you unmute and continue for us?
After the Prem Ashram was closed, I stayed with Baba in Mandalay. Then Baba decided to go on tours, journeys and voyages all over the world. The first was up to Kashmir, where we stayed in a mountain village about a month and then returned via Bombay. I accompanied Baba on his second voyage to Iran. We went to Isfahan and spent about 2 months there. From Isfahan, by Baba's permission, and as I desired and requested him, I departed and stayed in Iran.
Let's see what that that first asterisk is.
But Abdullah would not come.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The asterisk, the first asterisk at the bottom here.
Oh, recorded interview with Abdullah Pakrawan Chota Baba by Irwin Luck and Dr. Farhad Shafa in Bandar Abbas, Iran, 1975. In 1943, when I, Meherji Kakaria, had my business in Persia, I learned that this boy, Abdullah Chota Baba, was working in Persian customs in a nearby port. My business was growing very fast at that time, and I needed some good Persian fellow who could write the language. We were compelled to keep our accounts and records in Persian, and while I can speak the language, I can neither read nor write it. So I needed an honest, reliable man. I wrote to Baba saying that here was Abdullah working in a Persian customs office, and I could give him more pay and a few other advantages. Also, and if Baba would permit, I would employ him. Immediately the reply came, no, only would I permit you to employ him, but I would be very happy if you get him. But Abdullah would not come. We had correspondence. I offered him the job, but he would neither say yes nor no. As chance would have it, he was transferred to some other port. And since the steamers were not running during war days, he had to take the land route. So he came to my place, and I told him, I won't let you go. Then he started telling me his story. He told me how he loved me and would be willing to work for me and be with me, that it was not a matter of fear or any such things, but other circumstances. He had come to Persia with Baba in 1930 or 31, when Baba traveled there at that time. Baba had even cabled me to see him, if I could, but I was unable to leave the office where I was working, so could not go. This boy Abdullah, whom we called Chota Baba, Baba had nicknamed him that, Small Baba, was with Baba at a farm. At the farm, something came into his head, and he told Baba that he would like to leave him and go to his own place. Baba told him, wait for a while and I will relieve you, but just wait for me. I will send you later. He would not listen to Baba, and when he insisted, Baba embraced him and told him to go. He told me that when Baba embraced him, Baba had tears in his eyes. In my 43 years with Baba, I only twice saw him in tears. And that was not because anyone was leaving or had died, but because of his work or something. So I said to Abdullah, well, if Baba had tears in his eyes, then there was something very serious. So Abdullah left.
Go ahead, Alan Ray. I think someone just cleared their throat.
Okay. So Abdullah left Baba and got employment with an Anglo-Persian oil company in Abadan, Persia. He had a good job and was happy. But this young boy was sending Persian newspapers to a friend of his in Karachi. And the Karachi friend used to send him Indian newspapers. Abdullah used to write some Persian poetry, perhaps from Hafez, on the newspapers, and the Karachi boy would reply by writing poetry on the Indian newspapers he mailed to Abdullah. One day, the Persian post office started reading the writing on the newspapers. They thought it was some code he was sending from there because the British were looked upon as enemies of Persia. And the oil company where Abdullah worked was in the hands of the British. So they thought the boy was a British spy. And he was thrown into prison without a trial. This young, innocent boy spent 3 months in a dark prison. Of course, then he repented that he had left Baba. After 3 months, He was released because nothing had been proven against him, on the condition that he go back to the place where he had come, and he was not to leave that place. So that was the reason he was not going to work for me and would not join my office. But I talked with Abdullah and told him that the Persian government was not the same, since now there were so many Americans and British. I said we had some influence, and I would do anything possible. I would not allow him to go, and he worked with me until I left Persia. When I happened to faint for those 5 days, Baba had told those around him that I had been raised up to the 6th plane.
Let's see what that. Oh, and so that's a recorded interview with Abdullah Chodababai. Oh, it's still Irwin Lux is the source. Sorry, Alan Ray. I wanted to see
After I
what that.
recovered and was still staying with Baba till I left and departed, I was not raised more. And actually, I can say that experience was not preserved. Now, I haven't got anything with me. I heard from lectures of Baba that people may have these experiences and spiritual results even in many lives, that they have to come again and again. And in my case, either counting my age, underage, or for any other reason, it was his intention and his decision to stop this state. Maybe in my 3rd life, I will begin again to attain the goal that is destined. I hope so, but unfortunately, I did not preserve what I had attained in the path. And to some
I'm
extent,
sorry, is this words from Abdullah Pakravan Chatababa?
Correct.
I'm confused. Okay.
Yes, it is.
I hope so, but unfortunately, I did not preserve what I had attained in the path. And to some extent, on the whole, I can even say that it disappeared. But I can say that I got precious result from the life with Baba during those years and in the ashram. Even though I departed from him and lost my attaining in the path, I got character for life in the world, the worldly life in trade, in business, in community, with the neighbors, friends, trading. In all that, I have chosen the path of righteousness, truthfulness, sincerity, and even not a liking to material and worldly things as others can say. And I will say the truth that although I could have land, houses in Badar Abbas, today I'm living in a rental house. I have not an inch of land in Badar Abbas and no property. Of course, I'm working hard, and there is a result for working hard, but the money is spent on the education of my children and in other ways that do not need description. I worked for free for the Red Lion and Sun, the Iranian Red Cross, for nearly 27 years without taking a penny as salary or reward or anything like this. And this Red Lion and Sun, as you know, is at the service of humanity and offers the best aid that it can give to the needy at the time of disaster. I am happy that this result that I have is due to the life and due to the love that Baba gave. And he minded this. I'm very happy about this.
So I think this is a good place to stop and begin next week. Let me just turn off the recording.